Welcome to Maddie's Monthly Foster Connection, a monthly webcast where we learn about topics of interest to those of us who are interested in starting and expanding foster programs. Our guest today is Becky Costner, Executive Director of Let Love Live. Today, Becky will tell us how Let Love Live, a foster-based rescue, places a high volume of pets into foster homes while making it really easy for the community they work with to participate in fostering. The rescue started in 2021 with 11 foster homes and grew their foster base to 490 families in the first 2 years, placing over 2,500 dogs in foster homes by the end of 2023. Welcome, Becky.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to get to chat with people and be a resource for everybody that's looking at being able to either implement changes in their current program or being able to kick off a pilot program too. And I think that wherever you are at in your pathway for your foster program, that it is a great time to always be reviewing your practices and policies and making sure that you don't have any barriers in your program. So that is definitely what we're kind of going to be talking about today, is just breaking down those barriers. So definitely breaking the barriers to be able to embrace your fostering. And I love this hashtag. It's one of my favorites, and I say it quite often, is hashtag no barriers. Constantly reviewing your program for everything that you do as far as adoptions and volunteers and fostering and everything, I think is the key to not falling into a mold of a cookie cutter of this is the only way for rescue to begin. And it lets you, especially when you take the approach for your fostering program, it lets you take this approach of let's roll out the red carpet and let's make this be so that everybody doesn't realize that they have to be super experienced, that they don't have to be a dog whisperer or anything like that, that they can be working full-time jobs, they can have children, they can have pets of their own and everything and still be able to foster for you. So a little bit about myself. I'm going to see if I can move this off of here so I can read. Ah, technical. There we go. So I first started as a foster back in 2016 and was at the very beginning of the program here local for us. And so I really got to see firsthand how foster programs begin and everything. By 2019, I was a foster coordinator and we were growing our program in lots of major ways and everything like that. My family and I have currently fostered 203 dogs in our program. There's a little tiny picture. We have one sanctuary dog that lives with us, and then our other little pups are in the cute picture. They were, I can't remember if they were looking at me because I was feeding the squirrels or what they were doing in that picture, but they are my children. So lots of fun with them. A little bit information about Let Love Live. We do have 2 locations, so we are a bit unique in that type of context. We have our sanctuary and rescue down in Texas, and then we have our foster base here in Minnesota. We did start our foster base in Minnesota back in 2021. When we first started, we had 11 foster homes. That started with our first transport of dogs from our Texas sanctuary. And then I just ran the new numbers. I know Kelly had given some of those in the presentation of myself. But as of March 2024, we have just over 500 foster homes, and that is all across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and North Dakota, and then also in Texas. And as to date, it was 3,155 dogs is what we've had in foster since February of 2021. So we are super excited to always be celebrating the impact that we can make on dogs' lives and seeing them in homes instead of sitting in kennels in a building. And then I think that the biggest part when you're looking at anything is to first just really analyze your own program, or to go and look and be like, okay, well, what is my board or management going to be looking at as I'm getting ready to begin this foster program? Does your current program have, a long onboarding process? Do you have a limitation of you can only live, an hour away from our shelter? Do you require home inspections? Do they have to have a fenced-in yard? Do they have to show proof of vet records for all of the resident pets? Do you have to ask for landlord verification so that they can have permission Or are you just trusting them, to be able to say that, hey, I do have permission to do this. Yes, my pets are vetted. And if their pets aren't vetted, it's a great opportunity to educate them also for that. But then you can have little attributes in whatever system you use. We use Shelter Love, and we can simply mark that, they have an unfixed female, and then we're making sure that they don't have an unaltered male in their house for fostering at that time too. So all these little tiny things are just ways that you can really open up a foster that under normal circumstances wouldn't be able to foster for your program. And especially when we have so many programs that are either getting less fosters available or more dogs that need to have placement. I think it's really important to make sure that you're not limiting yourself by having barriers in place. So it's a good idea just to go through your own policy and be like, what do we have, for a barrier in our program like that? And the first one, when I first started doing fostering as a coordinator, the organization I was working for, we actually required deposits to be able to foster. And I remember this because Kelly, I actually had gone to the Pima in Tucson to one of the apprenticeships there. And I was like still flabbergasted because I was like, oh my gosh, they want me to kickstart this foster program and grow it. And they're going to require $100 deposit from people that are opening up their homes.
Oh my
And with the
goodness.
support of everybody at the meeting and stuff, then I was able to come back and show them the data for why this was kind of ridiculous and unnecessary like that too. So it's always just those little tiny things. So just really jumping in and like coming up with a plan for what you're going to do. Always calling it a pilot program if it's something new that, or if you're changing your program, just be, plan it for like 90 days and be like, hey, in this 90-day time frame, I'll make sure that I'm keeping track of this data. I'll make sure that I'm reporting to you with what's is needed to show the successes, and then to also show how you're being proactive if there are additional concerns that you have the ability to find solutions to be able to do that. And then just really creating this excitement, not only with just your fosters, but with all of your staff and, your entire team, and just be like, hey, like this is what other rescues are doing, and make those connections and network out with other people that, have that foster programs with limited barriers like that and stuff too. So then that way you can be like, hey, this is what's going on. What can I do for this and this? It'll just really help you be able to set a solid foundation and presentation with those people that may be overseeing it, that may be like, no, we need to have these barriers set for a reason. And then, like I said, have your check-ins to be able to share the data and to share the updates and to keep that continued excitement brewing with everybody for that. So then just taking your steps one step further, then you're going to review what your current program requirements are. You're going to review those onboarding processes, making sure that they're streamlined, making sure that everything you have is readily available. You want everything to be super, super simple. So you want them to have access to the foster handbook. You want them to have access to, this is what happens in case of an emergency. You want to have a Facebook group for your fosters and everything too. Just by having that, they can reach out because you'll be able to have foster mentors in there. So then that way, if somebody is unavailable, then they can reach out and be like, hey, like I have this going on. What can I do? Whether it's training, medical emergency, or anything else like that. Having transport help, you really want it to be like people don't have to have this like Better Homes and Garden foster home set up for that. They may not be able to drive. They may be a distance away from you and everything else like that. So what can you have readily available to be able to help that family be able to foster for you? So if they're not driving or they're not able to drive that far, it's a great way to be able to get remote volunteers that, may not be able to foster or do anything else, but they may be able to be like, hey, like sign me up and I can be able to help, bring a dog, either from the foster home to you or to a potential adopter or anything like that, or bring them, supplies as far as dog food, puppy pads, that type of stuff and everything. So just that streamline for everything can really make it be less barrier for that. So from the time that they sign up to the time that they can get a dog, how quickly are you able to do that? And I think just really having that big focus that, hey, like we can do same day fostering, like there's really no reason for that to be a barrier, I think in this day and age, because if they can get the application done and you have your coordinators be able to process that, you should be able to match them with the dog, or if they see a dog that they want to foster, just be able to have that readily available so that you're like, here's your dog. Especially because if people decide this in the spur of the moment, or if you're doing it like for a pajama party or a doggy day out, you want everything to be like checks and balances where it's just like, yep, come on in, let's get this done and everything. And even if it feels like it's work, especially like for on the short term side of everything, it really isn't, because that still is increasing your dog's ability to be able to get adopted, and then makes it quicker because then you're getting great pictures, you're getting feedback on it, the dog is getting out and just being seen and everything like that. So I think all of that is very, very important as far as streamlining that. And then just data tracking, make sure that you are keeping track of everything. If you're using Shelter Love or Pet Point or anything like that, all of that is very easy to have your fosters already set up. Make sure that somebody's always checking the dogs in and out on that. So that way you can run your reports and be able to see all of that. And then making sure that you're reviewing the policies, make sure that you're constantly coming back and you're reviewing and being like, hey, like, what do we feel is this? And discussing it with your team to say like, hey, do you guys feel that there's anything that we need to change as far as a barrier for that? And then just talking with other people too, to be able to see what they have that's working and what's not working and stuff, or sending over like, hey, this is our policy. Can you take a peek at this and see what you would do to change this or review it or improve it, like that too, is just great ways to be able to constantly keep your program growing. And then the benefits of no barrier is that you'll increase accessibility. You'll increase that accessibility, not just for the fosters to be able to help, but also for dogs to get placement in a foster home. You really get to create a diverse perspective of everything. Sometimes, with a barrier of distance or inability to drive or anything like that, you're able to really open up foster homes that in normal circumstances, they would think that they weren't able to foster. So just by creating that excitement, making sure that everybody is aware of that, can really help you be able to increase those numbers of fosters that you have. And keeping everything flexible and convenient really seems to be appeasing to fosters too. Like they'll be like, oh, I can only foster for 10 days and then I can't foster after that, and be like, oh, hey, like we can shift a dog over to you and then shift a dog either back to us or with another foster, or maybe a foster has had a dog for 4 or 5 months, and wants to have a break in that time. That could be a good way just to see a change in the dog, and then have somebody else taking pictures and videos, and can just show the flexibility for the dog to potential adopters too. And then that increases your applications for your fostering too, is by that word of mouth and people sharing in their areas, especially if you can knock down the barrier of distance. I think that, like for us, like I said, we have fosters that go into Wisconsin and then to North Dakota. So some of our fosters are 5 or 6 hours away from us. And I know that when we first started it, it was kind of like, oh gosh, like there was this fear of increased dog bites or, medical emergencies and everything. And all of our data is able to show that there has been no significant increase. It's still very, very minimal of having dog bites. We have had a few cases of lost dogs. Thankfully, most of them have been found like very, very quickly. But it's just important. Another important step of making sure that you're keeping track of your data, because sometimes, it's like on the news, you'll hear one bad thing happen and then it's shared over and over and over again. But then everybody's looking for that to be happening somewhere else. So then they can be like, oh my gosh, this is always happening. And you're like, no, it happened once, and then when you look at the big percentage of like, hey, we have 3,100 dogs in foster homes, and we only had one case where a dog has bitten, or we only had 3 dogs that got lost. That that's such a small percentage, that just truly isn't a barrier for all of that. And then the biggest part is that you're going to be able to save more lives by the dogs being put in foster homes. They're being more visible. You have open kennel space. If you do have a building or anything, then you have more kennel space to be able to rotate the dogs around, or your staff are able to do more day-to-day as far as social media and working with fosters and adopters and everything too. So it just truly is beneficial to always be reviewing those barriers. And I said this before, challenges and solutions. That fear of no control is something that I think that is just naturally probably in all of us as rescue workers. And it's just really jumping in and just realizing that to let it go, as Elsa says it, just let it go. For that part, you still have the control part of that, but you're putting the trust that people that are fostering are doing it for all the right reasons. And then that way you can look inward and be like, okay, what do I need to be able to provide for these resources to make the fosters, feel valued and everything like that too. So additional vetting costs. We have a list that has like partner vets and everything, and just reaching out to the different vets to have them set up, in case of ER visits and everything. Even with us in rural Minnesota here, we still have the vets that do the emergency like evenings and weekends and stuff like that. And just being planned, well planned ahead of time. We're already set up with them. They have our information. We're 501c3 status, so they give us a discount if we ever need to have that dog be seen with them or anything like that. And then it also makes it easy, so that way, if the foster coordinator is unavailable or anything, that somebody else can step in and be like, this is a vet in your area. We'll go ahead and get this set up for you and stuff like that. And I already kind of covered the lost dogs, dog bites, and stuff like that. So I probably don't have to say that again. But I feel that that's something that a lot of like boards and upper management really has a focus on. Like, this happens, this has to happen. And get data from other rescues. So if you need our data and stuff, reach out and I can send it over so that they can see like, hey, like this is something that happens, that there's no huge increase for this. So, and then an increase in quick return of new foster pets. If you are able to help with the matching and everything, and providing resources, there really isn't a huge increase, or we haven't seen a huge increase for that parts. And then it goes back to the deposit for people to foster a dog. People will steal the dog and squash that bug. So it's people aren't fostering dogs to steal them. And you can say, hey, we microchip our dogs, so they are able to get tracked a little bit easier that way too. And then measure that impact. Data, collect it, know it, use it, gather data from other rescue colleagues of their organization. So then that way it's just right there for you. You've got it in your head. You don't even have to be like, hey, let me get back to you on an answer. You just know what it is. Know your length of stay, know what the cost per dog is for a dog that's in your kennel building too. That really, really helps. Have the info to track, keep track of how many new fosters you're getting every month. What are the costs for supplies, the cost for ER visits, any major foster incidents? Keep track of all of that, because in that way you can continue to show that this is something that isn't like this is working, this is successful, because you can still end up having ER visits if the dog is in a kennel building too. So just having that data is great too. And then track that foster feedback. There's lots of different forms that you can use, Google Sheets and everything, and keep track of the foster feedback. That's also a great way to make sure that if fosters are feeling disconnected or feeling unsupported, that you're able to take that step to give them some more one-on-one time and reach out and just be like, oh, how can we help make this be a better experience for you? Making sure that your fosters feel valued and have a voice in the whole process is super important too. And then just remembering with community engagement that your community is not limited to your city limits. Really, I can't stress this one enough. Like there should be no barrier to distance as far as that goes. Make sure that you're talking daily about fostering on social media, whether it's on rehoming pages, your Facebook page, Instagram, whatever you're using. Encourage your adopters, volunteers, and fosters to talk about your program. Ask your fosters to go and share their foster dogs on their pages and on the rehoming pages, and it just keeps building. And then people are asking like, oh, Let Love Live, how does that work and everything. It's such a positive way to grow your program. Ask businesses and community groups to let you talk to them about their program, whether you have like local Elks clubs, Lions clubs, Wadena Chamber, like all the different businesses that you have where you're able to just really promote and engage and create that excitement of dogs getting into homes is very exciting for that. And then the best ever is KISS. Just keep it simple, silly. Remember to breathe. Remember that Rome wasn't built in a day. Remember, rescue isn't waiting for things to be perfect in order for you to make things happen. And most of all, just totally remember self-care. Remember that, you are in an airplane, and the first thing that happens in case of an emergency is a face mask comes down, and they tell you, make sure you put it on you first. If you're not taking care of yourself, then you're not going to be there to be able to help the animals in need and to help families that need that and everything too. So I think that's it. I feel like I zipped through that super, super fast this time.
No worries, no worries. We will move on to questions. Oh, and Becky, if you would turn off screen sharing.
Yes, I'm just
Thank you.
for my thingy here.
We had a question from Monica, if you would be able to share your foster handbook.
Oh, for sure. What I'll do is, oh my gosh, why is I could like having issues with screen sharing here? Let's stop sharing. Like all the little barriers. There we go. Sorry about that.
No worries.
It was like the little thing I couldn't get it to move over. Is it easy if I go and do a discussion on Maddie's and I can pop the links for everything
Oh,
on
yes, so we'll put a link to the discussion thread for MPF in the chat,
there?
and you can do that there. And also, if you are looking for other handbooks too, the resource library on MPF has multiple other handbooks as well. Okay. Can you expand on partnering with businesses to promote the foster program? How are you doing that?
Oh, yes. So just going to your local parts, like it seems like a lot of the like communities, like business night out in the chamber and like Elks and the Lions Club, a lot of them actually like to have guest speakers come and talk about like what their business is doing and everything. So really just showing interest to them, and they might not even realize that you have somebody that wants to come and talk about, what your program is doing and everything. But it can just be a way to be like, hey, like this is what our organization's doing, and we have this new focus, and we'd really like to be able to present to your group, because then those guys go and talk about like, oh, today, Let Love Live was there, and they were talking about their foster program and the difference that it's making for the animals and their care and everything. And then that's just, one extra way to be able to do that. So,
Awesome. Nancy had a question for everyone. So she asks about food access barriers and what is the standard for food supplies for fosters. She says, in Tucson, my personal experience with our county shelter only provides food if it's donated by the public and those donations are shared with the community outreach. She foster placed 32 pets in a year and was unable to continue because of the high expense of food. So mom and puppies broke the budget. How are all of you supporting fosters with food? Because I have heard this a lot, like, sometimes you'll do it. We will always buy food, or we could buy food when we have a surplus. How are you all doing it?
I can answer on our end how we do that. We do supply the food that we have in our program, and we're lucky because we are local with, or we're local. We're partnered with a local dog food company on the Texas end, and they do help supply food that we feed in our program. If it's a different type of food, we do ask for donations, for that and everything too. But I think that it really should be supplied. And I think that by knowing your data and you can go, well, I guess if you have a kennel building, you can be like, hey, like this is what the cost is per dog per day in our program, or cat, in our program, and be able to show that, the cost is $19 a day, like maybe for a dog. That's what ours is right now. And then by saying like, hey, like this like would be a cost that we would have anyway if they were here in our program versus them being in a foster home like that. So for us, we supply food for that. And it's a lot of asking for donations and stuff. Otherwise, it's got to be a budget line.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, how do you recruit the unicorn fosters who take the behavior and medical and complex large dogs?
Yeah, that one is a little bit that one can be tricky sometimes, I feel. I think that there's a lot of great webinars and stuff that you can watch that can help you be able to grow that part. But just really having it be something that's like quirky about the dog and really having a focus on all of the positive things and making sure that you're providing them, with the additional education and training ability to be able to help those dogs. And then maybe if it's like a longer term behavior dog, having it be where it can share a foster home to have those breaks and that and everything too for that. Um, it's always I think that it's always kind of harder for that part. And that's one of the areas that we do still struggle on is having those unicorn fosters for that. But just seeing what you can do and seeing what you can find for partnerships with training, other training centers and training partners, I think could help with that too in some sort of way if you can incorporate that into your program.
Absolutely. What was I going to say? Um, oh, also, when you get the fosters signing up, make sure to look at their application or their sign up form and prioritize the ones that don't have other dogs or other
Mhm.
cats or kids, and kind of see if you can kind of work with them a little more and see if you can kind of grow them into that. But
Right.
it's a struggle.
Yeah.
And the positivity, I think, is really important to get people to really connect with the pets.
Yep. And then what you can do too is make sure that, like in the system, we use Shelter Love. So in utilizing that, we really have a lot of attributes that we can mark on there. And then so by marking those attributes, then you can run a report and it can be like, okay, this house doesn't have cats, this house doesn't have kids, this house doesn't have other dogs. And then just making sure that you're staying and reaching out, even if they're like, oh, I can't foster right now, just keep asking, and I think that people say this a lot about our Minnesota foster coordinator, Kelly, is they're like, she's always asking like, hey, like I get that you can't foster right now, but you want to know what, I'm going to be reach back out to you, next month or next week even, and just be like, hey, how are you doing now? And everything like that. But sometimes, and I think I saw Rachel Jones just had this that she posted, Rachel in the shelter, and she had said that most people were saying that it was a lack of communication, as to whether or not they come back to foster again or that they just don't foster at all again is because while they were fostering, they weren't being contacted. So I think just missing that opportunity and reaching out personally and asking. So even if you're asking on social media, like in bulk, like, hey, we have these dogs that need fosters and everything, like personally reaching out to them could really be the difference in them taking a unicorn foster too.
Such a good point. And that's really interesting. It goes along with what we found when we did a FosterPlea survey a year or two ago. And we basically found that I thought we were going to find that there was like a limit to the number of pleas that people are going to be able to handle. And they would get tired after a while. No, no, the organizations that had the biggest foster programs were sending the most pleas.
Right.
And basically, the more pleas that they send, the more pets they had in foster. And I was really surprised by that. And I thought it was interesting. And so I feel like most organizations can definitely be reaching out more, and also the organizations with the largest foster programs also were reaching out personally in a lot of
Right.
cases.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's
And I think finding ways to be able to do that, like in a text form also, can make a huge difference too, because everybody is so text orientated, for that, in a great way. And we'd started doing this last year and it kind of fell to the wayside because it was a little bit more to get it kicked off and everything. But using Give Butter and updating our foster list to that. And then everybody would get a message and it would still have our foster coordinators information on there. Um, so it looked like the text was coming from her, but it wasn't. It was coming from Give Butter. But it would be like, here's the link, and you could click the link, and they could see the list of dogs that they wanted to that needed foster, and it would have cute little bios on them and everything. And then that would have a link that would be like, do you want to foster this pet? And then it would just, if they clicked yes, then it would send that information right back over to the foster coordinator. So then that way they would be like, oh, look at you want to do this. But just doing that and sending it out like once a week can really make an impact, with those text messages, because then they can, swipe right or swipe left. Like, do I want to reply or do I want to just delete this? But then that way they're seeing, and it's kind of feeling more personal where you're like, oh, look at Kelly sending this out, even though it isn't a bulk text message, but they don't see that. They just see that, oh, Kelly sent me a text message saying, hey, they need fosters. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I think I saw a study, and I can't remember what the percentages were, but the percentages of texts that are opened by people is something like above 90%.
yeah.
Versus email is like, you know, it could be like 3% for a lot of organizations. So texting is really, it can be really effective, I believe.
And I've seen that there's a lot of other options for doing the texting ones, but Give Butter is just one that we have become familiar with using. So
Awesome. And tell me a little about Give Butter, because I've heard of it and I don't really understand what it does.
it's like a donation platform. So then you can use that for like for people to donate also. So that's why it's like it still opens it up so that you can use it to be able to text people. And so like you could text them to be able to ask them to do donations. So we just incorporated it to be able to send out a mass text to everybody for that. So and it's free, so there's no cost for it or anything. And you can just create your different campaigns. So like you can have your campaign for donations, but then you can have your campaign in order open to be able to send foster stuff out. Like Give Butter doesn't pick up if it's actual donations or what it's doing. So
Oh, wow, that's cool.
yeah, we
Awesome.
like free stuff.
Yeah,
Or the software you don't have to pay for anyway. So yeah, it's
absolutely.
super easy. It's super user friendly too. It's very user friendly.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Um, for your onboarding process, do you do any type of training before sending the animals out?
We actually do not. We basically go and say, fill out the form. They have a phone conversation or it can be a text conversation. It doesn't even have to be a phone conversation. It can just all be in text and everything. And then we see, what do you need? Collar, leash, dog food, cat food, if it's a cat foster, kennel, anything like that. And then we, get to know like what they need to have resources. We make sure that they're in the foster group and stuff, and say reach out with all of this and everything. And then we actually use Maddie's pet assistant for everybody too, as far as them getting their follow-ups for filling out surveys and stuff too. But they don't have to do any type of additional training or anything for that.
Cool. And how is that going, and what type of support do you provide to fosters if they are running into issues?
Yep. So they can reach out and ask any questions, and have their resources. We have a pet resource center on our website where they can go. It has a lot of Dogly connections with Dogly and everything. So they can go on there, and there's great videos and everything too. We also utilize a lot of the bigger organizations that have resources on there too. We'll go grab one of their links and share that too, just because I think that sometimes having that big combo of resources is underutilized in many situations, for the fear of, oh, I don't want somebody to see their resource, but sometimes those resources are more experienced and have more accessibility towards that too. So we provide all of that type of help for them, and just really push, your 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, and what can we help with this, and then just having the different ideas, and then sometimes even tag teaming. Like if Crystal's talking to one person and they say, hey, like we have this source and that, this problem, and then if they're tried everything she has, and she'll be like, okay, well, let's talk to Becky and see if she has additional resources. And sometimes it's just they just need that support to get them through that hump initially. And if it's a situation that's going to last, past that 7 or 10 days, and you can't provide those resources, then you have time to be able to move the dog, or the dog is settling in and they're adjusting and acclimating, and then the foster is not feeling stressed out to the hilt on being able to manage the dog and everything too. I keep saying dog, but we do have cats that we foster too, so sorry for that.
No worries. So I should have asked you about this before, but do you mind sharing your screen and just quickly showing us a little your website and the foster landing
Oh,
page? Just because the foster landing page has some really good messaging on it, and
yes. Yes,
thanks.
I love our website. We worked with Dana from Sploot Marketing.
It's
Um,
great.
yeah, and she's fabulous. And so she actually helped design all of our websites.
No worries.
Yeah, so this is our website. I really, really like it. And so
I
it's a
love,
join
sorry.
us. Oh, go
I love
ahead.
that like the first thing you see on there is like we've 2,700 lives touched by fosters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm behind. I have not updated this, so I really need to go and update this. I think this was at the end of the year. This was at the end of 2023, was when we popped that one on there. So yeah, so our website has like all the different ways. So all the different ways to be able to do it. It's like, it's KISS, it's keep it simple. So it's just an easy flow for everything, so they can see everything right on the front, right on the first page for all of everything like that. Dana just totally rocked this whole job. And then so we have a little join our foster club. Our foster feedback is on here. So then we have some fosters this is where we highlight fosters for all of that. And we just ask them to share a picture of them with their foster dog, and then just to share a quick little clip about fostering and everything like that. And then we have just a little Q&A right here that talks about, all the different steps that you take for everything like that too. And then the foster club, we do have the products. Mighty Paws is one of our brand partners, so they get yak chews and stuff like that too. And then we do have the professional guidance, where we have the connections for that and everything too. So I think does that just jump us down there? Yeah, that's where and so it just shows how they can go all the way on the first landing page and be able to do that, or they can click that part. Sorry, I went too fast.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So,
No, I
so
appreciated it. I love the fact that on the website, it's very obvious from like the minute you land on the page that this organization values fosters.
yes.
And it's
Yeah.
really easy to find how you can become a foster. And
Yeah,
I
right.
like that
Join us.
yeah, I like how that you highlight the support that people get. I
Yeah.
think it's not something I've seen very often. And I
Yeah.
think if a person is, worried about, can I do this?
Mhm.
Hearing about the support that they'll get, I think is
Yeah.
important.
And that's what we have on here too, is the pet center. It's so nice because we can just copy and
Mhm.
paste and send it. And then this has all the new pet guides and training guides and nutrition guides and everything on there. And everything is like twofold. So it's good for our fosters and it's good for our adopters. So it's not like just the focus of one, because really it ends up being about the same thing on there and everything for all of that. So but we like have all the handbooks, everything is all in one location like that. Talks about the different, because you think of the mindset is like, oh, my dogs have to be social, socialized, so we have to go to the dog park. And it's not just about that. It's about your dog learning to not be reactive just out in general public. So I think that sometimes just having the different parts for them to be able to read. But like I said, you've got your handbooks that you can go and you can check in all of those. And then I love that they have Dogly has the kid-friendly printable ones, which is really fun when they have puppies and stuff, because then they can get all the different training guides. But from settling into the new home, and then I think that settling into the new home actually includes like this guide actually includes like how to prepare your home to bring home a dog and stuff too. So if somebody's like, oh, I am not sure how to do this, then we would go grab that handbook and be able to send that over to them. And it has all of that. But just having the resources, so then that way you can share that with them on top of talking to them, because sometimes talking is one way of doing it, but sometimes people need to read it and see it and be able to come back and refer to it instead of constantly they're like, oh, well, I don't want to keep texting you because I feel like I'm being a pain in your butt. And it's just like, no, 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 you can keep texting us as you need it, as you need it. And then that way they're not feeling burnt out, and like that they're being a pain in the butt. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's our website. I
Thank
really,
you.
really like it.
Mhm.
We're very proud of it. And seriously cannot shout out Dana enough for all of the resources that she provides for rescues and shelters. So
Absolutely. Do we have other questions? I think oh, okay. Oh, Nancy says, thank you, Kelly, for asking to have Becky review the Foster website. She's very excited. There's no room for disconnect in Foster volunteer program. So much value given today. That's great. Thank you so much, Nancy. I really appreciate it.
yeah.
If we don't have any other questions, I guess we can wrap up. So thank you so much, Becky. And thanks to all of you who are watching the webcast today. If you would please join our public group in Maddie's Pet Forum. Joining will allow you to participate in the discussions and receive announcements and notifications when recordings are available. And Becky will be available on MPF to continue the discussion if you have questions there. And I think that's about it. Really appreciate you all coming, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.